right. We have a lot to jump into, Taylor, but to start off, I want to talk about you and celebrate our favorite, well, second favorite Sagittarius behind Nicki Minaj.
Nicki Minaj. I thought you were gonna say Taylor Swift. Oh my god, that's so funny. I forget Nicki's a Sag. When's her birthday? Do you know what
Don't
day?
don't even I don't
No.
want to get canceled.
Is she a November or a December Sagittarius?
I'm literally looking it up now because I've been saying this for a month and I'm like, what if she's not a Sag?
Oh my god. I'll never
Isn't
forget something
Kim
we haven't
Kardashian
talked
a
about.
Sag?
No, Kim is. I don't think Kim's a Sag.
Oh, no,
When is Kim's birthday?
Nikki is a Sagittarius. She is a
Yeah.
Sagittarius. Yep.
Okay.
Yep.
And
My
interesting.
queen.
Well, I share a birthday with Billie Eilish and a couple of other people. I think
Oh.
Christina Aguilera.
Oh, wow.
So yeah, Brad Pitt maybe too. I think December 18th. But yeah, it was my birthday this last week.
Let's talk about how you made it an entire week and it was iconic in every way possible.
I did make a birthday celebration entire week. I would say maybe 2 weeks as well because I did have that birthday brunch and dinner back like the first like week of December.
You've got
That's
to
because
tell
I
them
have.
about your chili dinner. I'm sorry to butt in.
I will. You got it. You got it. So if you're based in Austin, the Texas Chili Parlor, one of the finest, best establishments you'll ever go to in Austin. No, seriously, no lie. I fell in love with it when I went tailgating before UT game once with me and one of my friend groups, because it's right across the office from one of my girlfriends. So it's like a perfect little happy hour spot her and her coworkers always go. And when I walked in, like it took over me, like the emotions, the feeling of being like, this is my favorite place ever. It's like a mix of a dive bar, a sports bar, but their menu is bussin'. Like chili, they have a bottle of Vouv on the menu. Like it's just so random where you're just like all of these cheap margaritas, cheap cocktails, and then a bottle of $115 of Vouv. It's just
I
like
love it.
it's perfection. So
Do
we
they have a
dressed
touch
up.
tunes there? I gotta ask.
I don't know if they did.
That would
This
have
is the type of
completed
place
it
that
all.
would though.
That would
Exactly.
have
Like this is the type of
completed
place that would.
everything.
It's wonderful. So we had a birthday dinner there, and then this week, my actual birthday on the 18th, we went and got some martinis and oysters, me, you, and
Love.
Kylie. And then this weekend we went to Wimberley, Texas. We had a
Beautiful.
little day trip, little sleepover the night before, and then yeah, Wimberley 10 out of 10 recommend if you're in the area. It's so cute. We had so much fun. What did you think of it?
Oh, it was so fun. I mean, the sleepover the night before was just so amazing womanhood. Like we put on Christmas movies, but it was so fun because we didn't even watch the Christmas
No,
movies. We were
not
all
at
just
all.
yapping and I got to know so many like things about like your friends who are becoming my friends for sure.
Mm-hmm.
And I felt so much closer to them after the trip. And then the next day, just going shopping and finding cute little trinkets at the vintage markets and all the little shops was just so cute. We kept walking around and turning around and being like, this is like the best day ever. Like
I know.
I couldn't
Everybody
even
was
like
saying
stop
that.
saying it. It was just a perfectly planned trip. We had so much junk food. It was beautiful.
It was beautiful. Thank you for bringing puppy chow.
I had to make it.
Literally, let us know if you know what puppy chow is because that was like people either know what puppy chow is or they don't. Like
Or
we
do you
grew up,
call them muddy buddies?
and
That's
that
a
is
debate.
not okay with me.
That's a debate.
Not going to be okay. It's a
That's a
debate. It's a
debate.
debate. It's puppy chow all the way. Thank you for bringing that. Everybody brought plenty bottles of wine. I genuinely don't know how many we went through, but I woke up the next morning feeling so puffy, all the sodium, all the pizza, the chips, the snacks we had, and I literally would not want it any other way. And yeah, it was really wholesome because when I picture my perfect Saturday, it is seriously like, okay, window shopping is just like looking through windows and shopping, but like to me, I categorize window shopping as like bumping in and like looking through a window and being like, oh my god, wait, no, let's like go inside, and that is what we did. I love doing stuff like that. All these little small businesses, it was adorable and it was wholesome. So thank
Yeah,
you to you and all the girlies who
of
made me feel
course.
so special.
Of course.
Yeah. Okay, I've got I've got some pods I'm excited about. No pods that I've ever talked about before, that are making their debut. 2 that are like regulars. Like I listen week over week to these podcasts and haven't talked about them yet. So I'm quite excited. I can go into it. Let's do our little like quick recap and then dive in. Okay.
Perfect. Okay, tell me your 2 pods this week, because to the viewers and listeners, we have kept it a secret from each other this entire time. I have no idea what Taylor's pods are this week, and you don't know except for one.
I know for just one. I know just for one because I think you like cross-checked it with me because you thought maybe I would recap it, but I'm not. So we're in the clear. We're talking about my girl Brittany Broski, of course. I'm going to cover the Broski report, auditioning for the live action Shark Tale. Her titles usually don't have like anything to do with the actual episode itself. Like she's like so random in that way. But I'm going to talk about her episode that dropped this week that shook the internet and shook Timothée Chalamet fans. So excited for that. And then Good Children, where Ilana Glazer was one of the guests. She is one of my faves ever from Broad City. So yeah, Ilana Glazer on Long Island, Weed, Motherhood, and Broad City. Their 6th episode of their season 5. And I've been a stan of Good Children for a while. So I'm excited to highlight it this week. What about you?
I almost covered that episode, and then I thought to myself, Taylor has never seen Broad City, nor does she know who she is. I'm not going to cover it. And now I regret it. I'm sorry.
Taylor's never seen Broad City, nor knows what it is?
Yes, that's what I assumed about you, and I'm sorry that I assumed this information.
I am so upset. It was the way offensive. Broad City is one of my favorite shows, and I've seen Ilana live in Austin this year.
I sincerely apologize.
Thank you. I will try to forgive you and get through this episode.
Okay, so I want to get to mine. I wrote them down because, man, some of these episode names are long. I say that, and these episodes are not even that long. But, okay, so the first one I listened to was this past weekend with Theo Vaughn. It was episode 551 with Timothée Chalamet.
Hey, 2 Timmy episodes.
Yes.
I love it.
So we found our theme. We were arguing over we don't have a theme this week.
We found our theme.
My second episode was episode 857, going deeper with Meredith Marks on the Viall files, which you and I both have thoughts on Viall files, but the guests of Meredith Marks, it had to be covered.
It had to be covered. Is this one of the first podcasts she's ever been on?
It was not mentioned on the Viall files.
Yeah.
But it's funny because they had Bronwyn on the show, and when Bronwyn was on it, I actually covered this on a few episodes back, but they mentioned that the Real Housewives of Salt Lake City hate the Viall files. And so you bring up a good point. It really is weird that she went on this particular podcast, in my opinion.
I'm interested to hear what you think about like how the conversation went, because recent tea, which you brought up, right, on our trip this weekend about Meredith and just like the way she communicates, right? There's some like rumors about her, you know, and this is something I've always noticed, like Meredith, just like her the rate at which she speaks, and this season especially, I've always kind of been like, you know, that's just like Meredith, but it's gotten progressively like worse, and I've always wondered what that is. So I'm like, how was she on the podcast? Do you want to dive into it?
Do you want me to take over first?
I think you should take over.
I get the torch? Oh, okay.
Torch is passed.
I'm so excited. Okay, so this episode, let's talk about it. Taylor, thank you so much. She is the brains of this entire podcast. She has this format that we are following, and it actually helps me with my thoughts so much because, like you said, there was a lot to this episode. Yeah. It was a 1 hour long episode. I thought it was really interesting. I'm going to start with an opinion because they did talk with Bronwyn about how the Salt Lake City housewives in particular hate this podcast because it just stirs up a lot of rumors and nastiness and things in the media, I feel like. What are your thoughts on that?
I guess it's not that I agree, but like there's a point to it. And I think that's just because Nick Viall has a very like well-known, successful podcasts. So it's like,
Yeah.
people go on the podcast, drop news you've never heard before. Like, I feel like the Viall File sometimes gets new information that nobody's ever heard, and that circulates to the news. And so
Absolutely. I think
it makes sense why people maybe don't like it. But like,
he
good
talks
on
a lot
him.
on the podcast, and I don't mean that in a rude way. He just loves to give his insight.
Yeah.
And I feel like that's not as normal nowadays with like PR, social media, managers,
Yeah.
everything like that. Everything is very curated when people go on podcasts.
Yeah, like that's
And-
the whole thing of his
Yeah.
podcast
Oh,
is
definitely.
he hosts guests, right? So it's
Yes.
like, it's a little refreshing that he has a podcast with guests, but he does a lot of talking. Versus
absolutely.
like maybe like a Call Her Daddy, you know, or something. Like that's
Yes.
another similar forum where they interview someone, or like a Joe Rogan, and like, I don't know. Maybe those are terrible examples because like Alex and Joe Rogan do a lot of talking too. But Nick specifically shares his opinion, which
Yes.
like, it's his podcast, whatever. But
Which
go ahead.
I think that's why people say he gets in trouble, quote unquote, is because
Yep.
of this. But basically, I will say I didn't listen to this other podcast, Las Culturistas, with Bowen Yang and Matt Rogers. We've covered this before on the pod. They had Angie K on the pod, and
Ooh.
it will be very interesting to hear your thoughts and viewers' thoughts about what they thought of, like, I feel like they're kind of rivals at this point.
They are.
And so the fact that these two podcasts were released at the same time, very interesting.
Mhm.
So basically, honestly, my understanding with Meredith, I think she has grown so much since the first season. I don't know if that is a popular take right now with Housewives, but the reason why I say this is that her perception on the podcast was really great. She was actually able to take what she has learned in therapy and talk about it on the podcast and how she implements it. It was
Okay.
really funny to hear this on the podcast because I went on TikTok right after and it showed how she apologized to all the housewives about yelling, and then like 2 minutes later she was up and screaming at people saying they need to leave, which is hilarious. But she talks about how there honestly is a lot of moments that they as producers try and make Meredith seem like the stirring the pot person, when a lot of the time she is just responding. Like the let's talk about husbands moment, we all thought that she was the one that was bringing up the husbands.
Yeah.
Well, she states that Angie K was the one that was talking about husbands before, and that it was just cut from production. And
Yep.
so she's the one that looks like husbands are being brought up. So I thought that was really interesting because I feel like people don't really like to, they always say like things are cut differently, but it was interesting. She's outwardly saying there's a lot of situations where I'm seeming like I'm in the wrong, and I don't think I was in the wrong. She talks about how the show had made her really reactive. It forced her to be a very reactive person. Again, we can laugh about it because we've all seen the clips of her apologizing and say, I'm sorry for reacting. And then 20 minutes later, she's screaming at everyone.
Back at it. Yeah.
But she has owned up to it and says that she is still trying to unlearn the reactive ways of, especially having Jen Shaw around, of having to scream to get her point across, having to get in people's faces just to be heard. And she said it's been really hard on her to unlearn this behavior. But the tea, or the headline, is that Jen Shaw reached out to her from prison and they
No
did
way.
talk on the phone.
What?
They did talk on the phone. Nick Viall asked her straight up, do you want her to be a housewife? Will you be her friend when she gets out of jail?
Yeah.
Great question. And she said that everyone deserves a second chance. She feels like Jen Shaw is trying to become a better person. She's paying her, I don't want to call, it's not a resolution, right? I forgot.
Restitution?
Restitution. I wrote it down and I didn't even spell it right because I was like, don't know what this is called. She's paying restitution. She is in all these like groups for prison women and things like that, and she really is trying to make amends. And so Meredith said herself, if Jen Shaw continues down this path, she is open to hearing her out, which I think is a big headline. I think that's Very interesting for her to say that.
That's a huge headline, and I have so many opinions.
Go for it. Go for it.
This is what gets me about Real Housewives. And to me, Salt Lake being completely different Salt Lake to me it's not like any other Real Housewives city to me. It's in of itself because these women, none of them were friends prior, right? Like we don't have any long history like we do on Real Housewives of New York with like Sonia and Ramona or something along those lines. These people who've known each other for decades and have some sort of common thread there.
Absolutely.
So when I hear literally the baddest businesswoman Meredith Marks would be okay rekindling with someone who went to prison, like make it make sense. For what? Like Meredith, why? It does not make sense to me. That's like the thing that I think like overwhelmingly pisses me off about Salt Lake City is like it's almost like the same narrative over and over the last couple seasons, and I'm getting some fatigue with Salt Lake, and I know that is a very unpopular opinion. People love it. It's their favorite like franchise. It was my favorite franchise the first like 2 seasons, and then up until kind of after all the Jen Shaw stuff went down, I was like, okay, I'm tired of the same women going after in the same like it is just like a loophole. Like I feel like it's like Groundhog's Day over and over again. And so I think that is like the craziest thing I've ever heard come out of Meredith Marks' mouth.
I think that's interesting you say because she kind of brings this up. She especially harps on Angie K, which is why I would love to hear the Lost Culture Research podcast. She was just saying how she feels like her and Angie have both apologized to each other multiple times about the same situation, and it just keeps getting brought up, and she's over it. And she feels like Angie K and Whitney are the two that are causing all these problems. And so Nick Viall, she had just filmed the reunion when she goes on the podcast, and he asked, because obviously she can't spoil it, but she says the reunion is very long, which Andy Cohen had said himself. I believe there's going to be 3 parts.
I love when they do that.
Yes. And so she talks about the reunion. She said that she got everything out on the table. She doesn't feel like that was said for for some of the housewives is a better word. But she doesn't think that she received everything that she deserved. And she said therapy point, she's learning the impact of the ability or the inability to apologize and move forward. And she's and so she talks about meeting people where they are, if they're ready for an apology or not. And that's kind of where she left it at. And she was talking about enlightening is like everything that she's learned this season, and that if you can't change the game, you can play in it.
Oh, okay. Mic drop. Those are the things I do love about Meredith. Like she'll have those one zinger liners and they're just like chef's kiss. I admire her so much in the businesses she's built and just like how much of a like I love her aesthetic and her vibe. So that's interesting. Good recap. It is. Good recap.
Yeah, I definitely think my biggest takeaway, if you are wanting to learn more about Meredith by herself without the context of every other thing in the housewife scenario right now, this is a great podcast because I do think that she does take ownership for it. It could be a hot take. I feel like for me, Salt Lake City TikTok is all over the place. People are on one side, on one team, and other people on the other side of the other team. There's new viewers, there's old viewers. People have so much insight about things. And unfortunately, Taylor, you know that I have been on the wrong side of history before with certain housewives. So honestly, listeners, you listen at your own discretion and you make a decision. I think that's the best thing that can come from all of that to say podcast is we are out here giving you suggestions. And we want to hear what you have to say, if you agree with us or not. Plain
Absolutely.
and simple. So,
I love it. I love it.
Okay. So give me one of yours. Let's move to one of yours.
I gotta go into the Broski report. So Brittany Broski is one of my comfort creators. She always has been, always will be. I adore her as a person, as a comedian, as a shared Texas girly. She's from Texas, and as a content creator. I love her family. Like anytime like I watch like a YouTube vlog and like her siblings are in there, usually around the holidays they do like a video together. So I'm excited to see like the Christmas edition one. She was such a dream to meet in real life. Sam and I were there when we both met Brittany for the first time in real life, and I did see her OG podcast, Violating Community Guidelines, when it came to Austin.
Yes.
And I love her. So this episode, it was called Auditioning for Live Shark or Action Shark Tale, which again, her titles have like nothing to do with the episode, but that's because she is all over the place in her podcast, which we love. It was basically kind of like her end of the year, like recap. What did I love in 2024?
Okay.
One thing I love about Brittany is her stanhood. Most of her fans know this about her, right? Like she latches onto someone and she is writing fan fiction about them, reading fan fiction about them. And I don't as much relate to it as much as I
identify with
admire
that.
it. And that's why I wanted to bring it up, is because we do have a resident like stanhood fan fiction writer consumer on the podcast.
Directioner is what I identify as, actually. Yes, absolutely. And I have no shame in that.
No shame in it. Absolutely. Have no shame. I don't judge people for their stanhood. I don't judge them for like how much they love something, but I will judge the topic at hand. And I do judge you for being a One Directioner, and you know this. But I support, and yeah, I support everybody having a passion in life. I just can't necessarily get behind it. But
they are my passion.
They are your passion, and I love to hear about it and talk about it all the time.
You say it all the time, but like to the listeners that don't know me personally, it literally is all the time. I send Taylor One Direction memes, and she literally doesn't respond to them, but I just don't care.
It's like it's the same. Sam sending One Direction content to me is the same as like someone who is not a TikToker, like does not have a TikTok account, sending them a TikTok, like texting them a link and then being like, I can't watch it, I don't have a TikTok account. So they just like never bother watching it. Like they're like a Reels person. Like that's the same thing. Like I'm never going to change. I'm never going to download TikTok AK. I'm never going to download One Direction and care. But you can send them to me. They're just going to go into the void. Love you. So yeah, I love Brittany, her content so much. She talked about a couple things. She's been very open about like her health journey this year, like has talked about her journey with like PCOS, has been like, just like very open about all day. It. Yes, and like I love that. I don't have PCOS, but like I've learned a lot about it from Brittany and from you. And she got into like working out this year, like her therapist, her doctor recommended it, and she loves the bar method. And I think it's so funny because she talks about how much she loves bar, and I consider myself like Brittany is open about how like you could not force me to work out or force me to go to the gym, but now she loves the bar method. And I'm the opposite, where I've always loved working out. It's always been like a pleasurable thing for me, but I'll never forget my first time going to the bar method, and like I hated it so much. I was so sore. I hated it. But yeah, so the biggest takeaway and the most shocking of the whole podcast episode was the drop of her doing a street interview with Timothée Chalamet.
I saw that.
You saw it. Okay. Yeah. I squealed.
I saw it on TikTok. Is it just like a quick little ad?
It's a quick little plug. It's a quick little ad. Timothée Chalamet, he's doing like a lot for the movie A Complete Unknown. He's doing like a lot of movie promo where he's like playing Bob Dylan, right? Yes. A fun fact about me, like I don't know who Bob Dylan is, like anything about him. Well, like the way I know this Bob Dylan name, but I like, is he in the Beatles? Is he like a part of a band? Is he a solo guy? Like I know nothing about Bob Dylan, and I had to get that off my chest. Like who is Bob Dylan? What is a single song Bob Dylan sings? It's like I've known this name, like trivia, like it's like Bob Dylan. Everybody knows that name, but like I don't know anything about him. So I had to get that off my chest.
And that's okay.
Anyways, so yeah, it was the cutest 6 minutes ever. Brittany has been very open about like her loving Timothée Chalamet. So to see their interaction, like I've always loved Timothée Chalamet. I think he's an amazing actor and he's so funny. And so yeah, Brittany calls herself, you know, like the leader of Broski Nation, right? Like
Uh-huh.
she calls all of her fans like they're the people of Broski Nation. She's the leader. There's a lot of like jokes behind that. And so she was like, you know, I want to go out and like I'm sharing all my favorite things of 2024 and now I want to go out into Broski Nation and like find out what their favorite things are, like their favorite album. So it was like a little skit where she was like, I'm here out in Broski Nation, like let me go find someone. And it was like Timothée Chalamet. And one really funny part of like the interview was he asked her like, you know, Brittany, like what's your ideal man? And she was like Jack Skellington. And literally this weekend for my birthday party, like we watched A Nightmare Before Christmas and I literally talked about how like Jack Skellington is like so hot.
Yes.
And
absolutely.
he was like, he made like a little joke like, you know, like I am built like Jack Skellington. And it was like the cutest little like flirty moment they had together where, you know, internally she was freaking out like, holy shit, I can't believe this is happening. So it was so cute. They did the Soulja Boy together. It was beautiful.
Can I just tell you this
yes.
Jack Skellington part? Josh
Please.
mentioned that in the car. He watched it. He didn't know it was Brittany Broski, but he saw Timothée Chalamet and he was like, the dude is shaped like a skeleton. I guess there is like a part where he like talks about he's wearing baggy jeans and then
yes,
he
this
like
was the part.
holds
Yes.
him and he's like, I cannot believe a man can be that skinny. And we were just talking about that in the car. So it's funny that you're talking about this because I
Skinny
was
legend.
dying.
That's the
hearing about
exact
that.
clip because she was like, yeah, like a Jack Skellington. And so he was like, look at me, these pants may be baggy, but like I'm built like Jack Skellington. That is so funny. Yeah, there's some sex appeal about Jack Skellington. Like I don't know. Let me know if you agree. Like I know there's some of you out there that do.
Viewers, leave it in the comments.
Yes, leave it in the comments. So yeah, it was wonderful. Brittany teased like a new medium that we'll know about in 2025. She's releasing in maybe like March or April. I'm curious what it is. You know, she's got 2 podcasts. She's got Royal Court, her kind of internet show. She's obviously a content creator. I'm like, maybe is she doing some sort of collab with like Prime Video? Like maybe gonna have some sort of like sketch comedy, or is she gonna have like, I don't know, like a live, like is she gonna do another tour? I don't know. I'm very interested to see what it'll be.
Yeah.
So
I'm
yeah,
interested.
all I have to
Alright.
say, there's really nothing better than when we make the right people famous, and that is Brittany Broski. We see her this year living out her dream of like interviewing people, like, you know, doing red carpets and Hosier, right?
Yeah.
And now Timothée Chalamet and her meeting Harry Styles. Like,
Yeah.
good job, Broski Nation. Like we have made a good and right person famous. So that's my recap.
Well, I guess that's a good segue because mine was Theo Vaughn and Timothy.
And Brittany has been on Theo Vaughn, so great segue, yes.
It was just a Bros with Bros podcast. I have listened to Theo Vaughn. I don't regularly listen to him. I definitely am more of a clips on TikTok kind of girly with him.
Yeah.
But I saw that he was doing something with Timothy, and I saw a clip on TikTok, and I was dying laughing. So I had to go and check it out. Basically, he's on there to promote a Complete Unknown, which we talked about. It was funny because they couldn't decide if it was biopic or biopic or like they were like
so real.
They were like debating over it, and Timothy was like, I don't know, biopic sounds like a documentary, and I don't know if they're like they were going into it about how to pronounce it. And it got me confused at one point. So I did have to fast forward because I was like, I, at this point, don't know how to pronounce it. But they talk about it. And it's funny you mentioned that you don't know who Bob Dylan is because Timothy said the same thing. He said that he grew up on rap and hip hop and things like that. And that he did start to listen to Bob Dylan before the movie and became a fan before he even knew about the movie. But it was just funny because that was his history with Bob Dylan as well. The reviews on Spotify comments were really wishy-washy.
Oh,
and
really?
I had to mention that because I was dying laughing. People were calling him like Tim Shallot and like all of these names and just being like, who's this pretty boy? Like Theo, get the
What?
real
No
man on. Like,
way.
yeah, it was so funny because they were like, get a real man on, Theo. Like it, but then of course there's the girls that are like, oh my God, like, love
Yeah,
him
that's what
so
I
much.
love about Theo Von's audience is it's like it is all over the place. The girlies have started to infiltrate for sure.
It was so funny. I wouldn't say this is like a very informational podcast episode. It was literally just to listen to have fun.
Yeah.
I would say the funny banter for the listeners, if you're trying to hear a really funny story that had me on the ground laughing, it was at 47 minutes. They talk about housing. And I will say, Timothy, I really learned to adore him from this episode. I haven't watched, honestly, any of his movies. I haven't seen Wonka. I haven't seen Dune. I haven't seen any of these.
Can
The
you please
only,
watch Dune over Christmas break? I'm begging you.
I only know him from his performance of Roman's Revenge in a pink wig by Nicki Minaj. You haven't seen that clip?
Yeah.
That is the only reason why, because I'm a Barb, and so I saw that clip and I was like, wait, I absolutely adore him. The only, or not the only, the funny moments had me listening to this whole hour and a half long podcast. But it was funny. He talks about, and I am interested, this is just a silly topic, Taylor, but he talks about when you get older, your name changes. And so, like, he's going to go from Timothy to Tim by like 40, and he was talking about how like once he makes that transition he's gonna have to start mowing his lawn, taking the kids to like swim meets, and he was like, yeah, once I make that transition to Tim, it's all over. And so it had me dying laughing because I've always gone by Sam, and I'm like, now that I'm getting older, a lot more people are calling me Samantha, and I've just kind of accepted it. And I just thought it was funny. I don't know. Do you
That's
think,
so
like,
funny.
did you ever go by Tay or like any sort of nickname, or were you always just Taylor?
Most people, like, especially back home in college, like, do not call me Taylor. They call me Lemke or Lem.
Wow. Okay.
Yeah. Oh, a majority of my friends call me Lemke. But like, I feel like, yeah, and when I moved to Austin, it's like, no, people usually call me like Tay or Taylor.
Wow.
That is so funny though, the whole Tim thing. Like, you're so right. Like, nobody knows like a 4-year-old named Tim. They're Timmy or Timothy, but nobody knows like a 50-year-old named Timmy or Timothy. It's Tim.
Exactly.
That's
Exactly.
hilarious.
It was so funny. It's one of those podcasts, if you're listening just to bros
brain
being
rot.
bros, that's a great brain rot episode. It's not informational by any means.
And you know,
but
you did find
so funny.
another common thread. Nicki Minaj, our Sagittarius girly, and Timothy. Literally, the debut of Timothée Chalamet was that video. Iconic.
That's all I knew him from. I have not seen any of his films. No disrespect to him, but that is what I know him as. Oh, actually, one last comment. He
Oh God.
Theo Von, he called Nashville the John Bonets of cities. And
I'm sorry.
I Josh was in the car listening to it with me because he was like, I want to listen to it with you. And we both paused it, looked at each other, and we're like, I don't know if we're going to continue listening to this. And it was like the first 10 minutes.
And like, what does he mean by that? Like, I'm not making the correlation here.
He literally was like, you can't cheat on your wife there. It's very like everyone knows each other. Everyone knows each other there. It's a very family town. And he's like, it's the John Bonet of towns. And we were like,
wait, but how does it? God, that is one thing I love about Theo is like,
I don't know, Taylor.
The character he plays, it like he's so funny.
Taylor, I had to go back
Genius.
and like literally look at the subtitles because I was like, I just don't believe in my mind that he said that. But I had to mention for the viewers, like, if you're looking for a funny podcast that makes no sense, Theo Von. So, okay,
Theo
so
Von.
give us your last podcast. We're doing a kind of quick episode, so give us your last
We
podcast.
are. I know. That's okay though. I think I can for sure round this one out and could actually talk about this one alone for an hour because some of my favorite people and my favorite show ever, Broad City, which still offended that you think I've never seen. I can't be that offended because I had no idea you knew what Broad City was, or Ilana either. Have you like you've seen it all? When did you watch it?
Oh my gosh, I actually have not watched it all the way through. I had a history with it because in college, there was this girl I was friends with, and we're still friends. And I went over to her apartment, we were just having one of those girls' nights, and she's like,
Yep.
"You need to watch this show. You remind me of these women." And I was like, "Oh my God, cute!" Like I'm thinking it's
Turn
gonna
it
be like
on.
something so cute and
Just like gorgeous, stunning,
Sex in the
amazing,
City.
respectful. So, yeah.
so like funny girlies, whatever. And then she turns on Broad City, and I was so offended. I made her turn it off. I literally got in a fight with her. I was like, "You think this is what I am as a person?"
It's hilarious. She 100%, I feel like, thought you were Ilana, right? Like,
No,
so fun and chaotic.
I feel bad because it started a fight, but she literally, after it all, was like, "I meant it as a good thing. I love this show and I love them." And I was like, "Girl, this show is a hot mess." And I was so offended. But no, I haven't seen it all the way through. I've seen a couple episodes. I definitely need to watch it. But I do love Ilana. I have seen that she is touring, and I feel like we need to get tickets because
Well, she's on so many promos. I mean, this week she was on like so many podcasts. This week she was on Connor and Brooke Make a Podcast. She was on the JVN podcast. She is going to be on Brittany's podcast, I believe. She talked about it on Connor and Brooke Make a Podcast. So she was like, I was just with Brittany this week. Hasn't launched
she was
yet.
on Drew's podcast too.
She was on Drew's podcast.
I saw that.
What is it? Oh my God, the comment section with Drew. Yes. And then Good Children. So, okay, little backstory about Good Children. I discovered this one, I think it was like last year, maybe. Joe and Andrew are the hosts. Have you heard of Good Children or no?
No, I was recommended the episode because I like, obviously,
Ilana. Yeah.
So
yeah.
I had never heard of it before. No.
Love it. A little the backstory then. They are two best friends, like childhood best friends, met each other like in like elementary school. They grew up in Long Island. They were closeted all up until they told each other that they were gay, maybe when they were like 21. I at least know that's when they came out to their family. Okay. And so it was like around similar time frame. So they just talk about like their 24-year of friendship and just like they were the definition of just like good children growing up, like doing all the right things, like being, you know, like the class president, you know, the DARE program, like boys and girls state, like that lore of high school. Like they did it all. But like internally they were like a hot mess and struggling because they were closeted and they were just trying to like fit in and try dating girls. They have such cute episodes week over week. And so it was fun because Ilana, she's a Long Island girl as well. Like so much of their similarities, and they, you know, say a lot of they attribute the success in them starting a podcast to Ilana in Broad City, because they're like what Ilana and Abby had in Broad City, they feel like their friendship they have. They live now in Brooklyn together. And so yeah, I am the biggest fan of Ilana. Really, my takeaway was they had a lot of like fun conversations about like what it's like to live in Long Island. Like, you know, they're very outwardly, like they outwardly talk about like their political like viewpoints, are big advocates. And so there was a lot of like that kind of conversation. There were a couple of like heavier topics and dark moments of just like, what was it like to grow up in a conservative house? What was it like to come out, you know, during the 2016 election, some segregation, some anti-Semitism, but like for the most part, they kept it like pretty upbeat and like lively. But that still is just like so who they are, like at their core, is to talk about those things. But one thing, you know, I wanted to talk about was like her and Abby's relationship in Broad City, right? Like they are like the creative geniuses behind Broad City. You know, writing the episodes, writing what it is like for these two girls to be like best friends in New York. And fans so badly want to still have that. They want to see Abby and Ilana together. And Ilana's just like, yo, like, I love Abby. We are best friends. We are also coworkers. I'm also now a mother. Like, Abby is now married. And so she's like, you know, that's like a lot of pressure that fans like put on them a lot, is like, why do we not see you and Abby interacting the way you did in Broad City? And it's like, this was a show, you know, like we're comedians, right? And so that was really interesting. And honestly, like, yeah, I think some of my other favorite takeaways is just like, you know, Good Children, Broad City, they're so intertwined. So I feel like if you love Broad City and just like two friends and like the New York of it all, listen to Good Children, because you get so much of that out of that podcast week over week. And I love how much of a resurgence Broad City is getting. Like, you know, the whole In Declare We All fam, like that sound is going all over TikTok and Reels. My favorite quote ever is like, marriage, Lincoln, I'm only 27. Like, what am I? A child bride? Like, I'm devastated that I just turned 28 this year and can like no longer say that. But whatever. So yeah, that's my takeaway. It was a great episode. Loved it through and through. And yeah, now on your content list over holiday break, you need to watch Dune. You need to listen to some Bob Dylan songs, as will I. And then you need to finish Broad City. Okay?
I do. I need to. I've actually heard really great things about it. It has permanently been in my mind that in college I had to watch it and someone was like, this is literally your life.
This is you. Totally.
Like, are you kidding me? It was like one of those episodes where they were just, I'm sure this is every episode, but like they were having their downfall that episode. And so it was just like all offensive. Like I think Ilana's character or Abby's character hadn't even showered for like a week or something like that, and she was just like, yeah, this is like totally you vibes. And I'm like, great. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Great to hear.
We had a really great round of podcasts this week, and honestly I did want to mention this week of podcasts, it was hard to choose my episode. I was thinking about Las Culturistas. I wanted to do the one with Ilana. Was there any other ones that you were? Oh, Hot Mess with Alex Earl and Jake Shane.
Literally was on my list too.
That was on my list. I thought you were gonna cover it. I thought about it. Why I was like, didn't.
We talked about Jake. Like I've done a Jake episode. You've done a Jake episode. So I was like, you know what? It's time for me to bring up Brittany and Good Children. So. Good episode this week. I guess to the listeners, we have one more episode for the year. That is our regular content, right? We'll do a recap. It'll come out on Monday, the last Monday of the year. We'll recap our 4 favorite pods, and then we have like an exciting bonus episode that will be coming out by the end of this year as well. So stay tuned for that. Essentially, it's a way to like get to know us better a little bit more. So we're very excited to start introducing that. But great episode this week, Sam.
Follow us on all of our social medias. That is a big thing that we're pushing. We really want a community, so please follow us on TikTok, Instagram,
YouTube. We post these on YouTube and Spotify. Agreed. Go follow us at All That To Say podcast. I'll leave it in the descriptions of this episode. But okay. Love you, Sam.
Love you. All right.
Bye, everyone.